Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining HR.com today as we are going to dive into the wonderful world of e-learning. We have now opened up our virtual auditorium, thereby allowing everybody from the lobby to make their way into the auditorium. I am happy to share as well that we are streaming live on social media. So while we just have a couple of our moving parts connecting, for lack of a better word, I welcome everybody. I hope everybody's having a thrilling Thursday, and hold on tight. We're going to begin in a matter of moments. We see we have more people making their way from the virtual lobby into the auditorium. I just want to capture everybody so nobody misses a heartbeat. And I think we have now hit that pivotal moment. Okay, fantastic. Well, welcome everybody. Once again, we are officially beginning. My name is Jen, and I'm happy to be one of your hosts today. Welcome to our masterclass, our webcast, our demonstration of Sam versus Addie, how to create the best e-learning possible. This session is being brought to you by HR.com, along with our best friends at Allen Academy and Allen Interactions. Please know that the session is being recorded, and we will happily provide you with an archive to this recording following the session. Please allow 24 to 48 hours. If you have any questions, thoughts, or comments at any time, please feel welcome to send those to us by means of the chat feature or the Q&A, both of which you can find in your Zoom control panels. With no further ado, let's begin. So let me tell you a little bit about HR.com, since this webcast is being brought to you by HR.com. For the last 21 years and going strong, HR.com has proudly been serving the HR professional arena as an all-in-one stop-shop social media destination, if you will, for HR professionals. We're really proud to be growing our membership base minute by minute. We have well over 1.8 million members. And like I said, just keeps growing. Our mantra and really our purpose is to maximize human potential. And as learners and educators and HR professionals that I imagine you are, or perhaps aspiring, we're very, very happy to be by your side every step of the way. But even more so, I'm very proud that HR.com has partnered together with Allen Academy, who combines decades of award-winning e-learning programs to help professionals like yourselves continue to develop yourself, master the wonderful instructional world of e-learning and design, deployment, development, but it really all comes down to making meaningful, memorable, and motivating learning experience. And that's what Dr. Allen and Christopher Allen will speak to today. And we're going to get to them in just a matter of moments. So, funnily enough, that moment has come. I'm going to gently introduce our two speakers today, because no doubt they are going to do a far thorough dive into their bio themselves. But we are proudly with today Dr. Michael Allen, who is the founder and CEO of Allen Interactions and the Allen Academy. Dr. Allen is a pioneer, to say the least, in defining unique methods of instructional design and development, providing, as we said moments ago, meaningful, memorable learning experience. And joined together with Christopher Allen, who is the Chief Strategy Officer of Allen Interactions. Christopher focuses on developing tools and technology to enable organizations to architect the best approaches to achieve outcomes. These two gentlemen together are going to be speaking about Sam versus Addie. How do they create learning experiences? We're going to take a look at Addie as the waterfall process, and a little bit more specifically, we'll do a deeper dive into Sam. So really differentiate what's the difference between the two. And then I'm going to return, and we're going to wrap up this webcast talking about how you can take all of those critical learnings that Dr. Allen and Christopher Allen have brought to you today, and how you'll be able to channel that into your own ingenious e-learning modules. So with no further ado, I am going to pass over the microphone and the screen control to Dr. Allen. Enjoy, everybody.
Well, welcome, everyone. And Christopher, welcome to you too.
Oh, thanks.
And who is this? Well, I am Michael Allen, and it's not hard to deduce that I've been working at this for a long time, and Uh, I have I have so many books that I've studied in this area and found that the real world and the book world often are a little bit different. And when I came to Minnesota, as I did in 1974, which I should announce that it is a happy 1 degree over freezing right now. So, no jackets needed, blue sky, beautiful, beautiful day here. Um, but we're all sitting inside doing our work, right? And um, what I've been studying is what are the simplest ways to use digital platforms to create meaningful, memorable, motivational learning experiences. And I have in this library of books, I have many books on ADDIE. I used to teach ADDIE I did at the Ohio State University, University of Minnesota, St. Thomas University. And I believed in it strongly then. I will tell you in a few moments why I think we can do much better. And I'll let Christopher introduce himself.
Sure, I'm Christopher Allen, and as Don was saying in the chat, are you two related? Absolutely. I get to work with my dad just about every day, and with a lot of our friends too. And so we're really excited to have this partnership with HR.com and to put together what I think is really unique programming and opportunities to lift up our field and our profession. And we're going to be talking a little bit about SAM today. And we've got a course that we're producing together, which is a 5-week course that gives students a real hands-on experience with the tips and tricks and techniques that are required to make Successive Approximations Model work, or SAM, work for you and your organization. And what's unique, I think, about this course and another course we'll talk about is that you're going to get hands-on experience to actually do some work, potentially work that you're going to share with your office and your coworkers about different ways to improve your process and skills together. And we've got a course here starting in February on the 8th on SAM, and it's being taught by my dad and Ethan Edwards. And it's really for people who are aspiring to upskill their organization in a meaningful way to get a more proven and consistent product out of the learning investments that they're making. And we're hoping that there's a broad audience inside the organization that's interested in attending. I think oftentimes learning professional feels like they're an order taker and not really in control enough to shape the destiny of learning projects. And SAM really does require good participation from a number of people across the organization, and we'll talk about that today. So it's good for a broad audience, and we'd certainly love to have you attend. The second course that we've got is being taught by Clark Quinn, and he's put together a really fantastic curriculum on the emerging field of learning science, and he's bringing together neuroscience and cognitive science and psychology, as well as a lot of the great studies that have been done in the learning field about what really does it take to make an effective course for adults. And with Clark, just like with Ethan and my dad, you're going to get hands-on experience to really build something that you can take back to your organization. And in this case, it's developing a framework for what should be the criteria in which you judge your learning experiences against. And Clark's got some really wonderful material that pulls together some of the myths and misconceptions about what makes effective training, and compares and contrasts that to what the literature and research says, so that you can really be moving towards investments that are going to be effective for the students that you support. And we're building together with HR.com a collection of these courses that really go together for people who want to be leading the charge for their learning departments and for their organizations to really build and make significant change to support the employees and students that we all have. And so with that, let's give a little preview of what SAM's all about.
Thank you, Christopher. So I have a question of you all, and I hope you will use the chat facility to throw some answers at me. Why do you find, and why do you think others find, creating great learning experiences is so difficult? What are the challenges? There are many challenges, but what are the ones that just are the most perplexing and most difficult that you encounter? And Christopher, maybe you can.
Yeah, I'll read them as we go. Time and money, design time, holding one's attention throughout, being able to keep people's attention, motivation, subject matter expert involvement, lack of consensus, too much information, buy into the program, lack of meaningful input from subject matter experts, lack of resources, clients, hard to do the activities, trust that management cares, not just pushing content down. Let's see, stakeholders wanting to direct what is in the experience, apathy from new generations, accelerated technology changes. A lot of good ones in here.
Absolutely. And what this does is it makes me feel like we really are in the same space. That those, boy, I encounter those problems every day, and our studios do. I mean, even after being in this work for really about 50 years in my case, those are perpetual problems. Every one that you listed is certainly one that I know that we've encountered, and some of those just kind of keep coming at us. So we need an answer to that, right? And it needs to cover a lot of bases. And that's what I found personally Addie was not doing for me so well. Here are some of those that I pre-listed here, and you'll see the similarity of those things that you were reporting as well. Some clients expect miracles because, wow, it's computerized, right? It can do anything. Or they have such low expectations, that they just want to do something that's going to put everybody to sleep in 3 minutes. The SMEs, they're not available when you need them, or you have a bunch of SMEs. We have a project right now that has over a dozen SMEs, and they all have opinions, and they don't all agree with each other, and they take forever to give us the input that we really need. Organizations will represent that the content is already, it's all written out. We have instructor notes, or we have these guidebooks or these manuals or whatever. It's everything you need, and of course, it's not going to be, and it isn't, and constant changes to all this. So we are really in the same space, which is a little bit comforting, actually, to know that it's not just the work that we're doing or how we're using it, but these are real problems that hold us back. I'm going to talk about a process that works for us in a minute, and contrast it to what I used to teach for Addie, and I know a process that a lot of other people use. But I do want to say right away that if you have a process that's working great for you, and it hits on all these cylinders, and it's giving you what you want, and it manages the time and budget, and it satisfies clients, I'm in praise, and you should stick with it, and you should disregard everything that I have to share, and I would really like to hear from you. So stick with it if you've got it. But I do think most of us face very similar problems. And when you agree that it'd be great to have 100% confidence in the success of the final product that you're going to put out. Plus, you'd also like to have a great product available before the budget is exhausted, rather than feeling like we just need more money and we need more time to get this right. You'd like to be able to get it in not only on time but early is a really wonderful thing. You'd like flexibility for everybody to be able to change their mind in the process, to not feel locked down from an earlier idea that now in retrospect you see something better. So you really want flexibility. You'd like to get your shareholders to have a shared vision early on, right? And stick with it. Plus, we'd like to have the full team's involvement and ownership, obviously. If we can get those five, just those five, we'd be in heaven, wouldn't we? So starting from Addie, where I started, and I don't know how many of you have as well, but it's probably the most widely known process, which was, of course, developed in wartime when a lot of content needed to be developed very fast by people who had little, if any, background in human learning, instructional science, in instructional design, and so forth. Mostly, they were subject matter experts, and that was it. And they needed to develop training. And everything that's covered in an ADDIE model is important. You can't argue with the value of each one of these things. And when I came up here to Control Data Corporation as a director of R&D for the Plato system, which was certainly an honor to have that position, this is what we were doing. And we had around 250 people developing courseware for delivery on the system. And this was our basic framework that we worked with, and we used it as a phase model. Now, I know lots of people have smartly modified it so it's more iterative and less phase-based. But what happened to us is that while we were producing a heck of a lot of courseware, a lot of material, a lot of people working. And I should say those 250 people that were working were not the subject matter experts, the subject matter expert up on top of that. So it was a sizable operation that was going on. What I was discovering is that nobody was happy with the final product. Almost nobody. A few projects, fared much better than others. But when I'd ask the team, and then my casual questioning actually morphed into doing some pretty serious studies. When I asked the team how happy were they with the final product, they'd say, it wasn't what I thought we were going to do. It didn't meet my expectations. There are so many things wrong with it. And I try to ask them, well, how was it that you couldn't make it what you wanted it to be? And I'd hear such things as the instructional designer saying, well, the subject matter experts didn't tell them everything that they needed to know when they were designing. And so I go to subject matter experts and ask them, why didn't you tell them everything? And they'd say, because the designers didn't ask me. And I said, well, how can the designers ask you? Because they don't know the subject matter that you know. Well, I didn't know what they were going to do with what I was telling them, and I imagined they were going to do something different. And then when I saw what they were going to do, I realized, oh, we needed to get this stuff, to which the project manager told me, we don't have time for that now. We had a period where we had that flexibility. Now we spent like 70% of our budget or wherever the process was at that point. we don't have time to go back and redo that. That's too late. You needed to tell us sooner. Why didn't you tell us sooner? Well, I didn't see what you were doing, and I found this going on between every combination of people. If you talk to the programmer and the project manager, they'd have that kind of a conflict going on, or the writer or the illustrator or the developer, whoever it might be. There were all of these conflicts, which led everybody to be disappointed at the end of the project. Not only that, but we had a terrible time getting projects done on time and within budget. And we were kicking ourselves all the time because we thought, with the experience that we had doing so much work, that we ought to be able to control this a lot better. And it just seems like every control we tried to put in place backfired, and it didn't help us get to where we want to. Now, we really, as I mentioned, we saw ADDIE as a waterfall process. We had to get our analysis done before the design, get the design all fleshed out before the development, and so forth. What inevitably happens is that when you work with each step, you see that there are things missing from a previous step, or things that could have been done better. But the way we were budgeting was that didn't allow very much of that. Over time, of course, we increased the amount of time and budget allowed for going back and doing things over. But it also felt to the team like if we had to go back and do things over, that it felt like somebody was at fault. If you'd have just gotten this right the first time, you'd have all been a lot better off. And pressing people that way caused them to work a lot more slowly with a lot of anxiety because they were going to be tested in the future phases, which meant that there was a lot of finger pointing going on, and it was just terrible to be truthful. And so, as a waterfall process, you go through these things and go on to the next ones, and again, you try to allow sometimes to go back and redo things, but sometimes redoing something caused other things need to be redone, and it felt like you're just constantly in this amorphous work that was hard to see moving to a goal of finished product very, very readily. So I mentioned some of the problems we had. Clients were also often surprised at the reveal of the final product. SMEs were as well. Well, even the designers were surprised. Other people were surprised because they thought everybody knew what we were doing. We always had requests for changes late in the process where they were most expensive and most difficult to do. A lot of finger pointing, a lot of anxiety, and dissatisfaction at the end, including mine, because we really wanted to produce superior learning experiences, and we know that it's possible. Why weren't we doing it? So part of the problem is that development of instruction occurs quite a ways into the process. This is the first time that people can really see what all this documentation is building toward. Even storyboards and sketches and whiteboards and things could help, but very many times when you start to get the interactivity going and you start getting this look and feel well-defined, people are surprised that, oh, I didn't realize that what I was seeing earlier was going to end up being this. Now that you've done this, let me tell you what we really should do. Isn't this a great idea? Just listen up. I just got this great idea. And of course, everybody in the team was saying, yeah, but not now. Not now. We're building this thing, right? And if it weren't people in the team, when we went to validate things with real learners, we could all see that things needed to be changed. And so we needed to think of this point as being more like 30% through or something like that, not closer to rollout as it appears in the graph. And these are just a couple of the problems. I have a big deck of slides that goes through and talks about almost every square and how it has interdependencies and others, and how it's almost impossible to do this in one pass. You just have to do this in iterative ways. And I suspect nearly all of you have come to that same conclusion and wouldn't even try today to do this in one pass. I'm not suggesting that you would. Overall, though, what this process does at a higher viewpoint is that it tends to focus a lot on the content and not nearly as much on what the learner is going to experience and how they're going to experience it. And from my point of view, I like to see us designing the learning experience very early in the process and then populating it with the appropriate content rather than the other way around. And I'll talk about that, really flipping the process a lot. There's a lot of emphasis on documentation because you're passing this through very many times from one person to another, even in some cases from one department to another or one team to another. And specification documents need to be written, which take a lot of time. But that's not the biggest problem with them. The biggest problem is that people can read words and in their heads see something quite different from another person who read the same words. And so that's how these expectations start diverging. And it isn't until you've developed something that people realize what somebody else's interpretation of those words was. And so that's really, I think, a crux of the problem right there very often is to such emphasis on documentation. In the Agile world, especially in software development, there is almost an aversion to documentation. We want to minimize, some documentation is necessary, but we want to minimize all documentation that we can get by without and put our time and effort into actually building things that can be evaluated rather than a document that's evaluated and then you build something that's evaluated again, right? So we try to get to a product as fast as possible so we have lots of time to change it. Emphasis is very strong on the process. You've got, the ADDIE guards who, say, this is how we do it. This has to be done this way. I need this by 3 o'clock tomorrow because that's the way we do it. And just complying with the process doesn't mean you're building something great. It's nice for management for sure. And being a manager, I appreciate that. But I don't want to do a great job of following the process and producing a crummy product, right? And I don't think anybody really does, right? So, and then it's just tedious. It's just nerve-wracking in so many ways. So, if any of you out there are one of my graduate students to whom I taught ADDIE, I do apologize sincerely because ADDIE was right, and you can't argue for it. I would. Put on a debate team, I could put on a really good argument for ADDIE, I think. But if you ask me what I really thought, I would say there's got to be a better way, and there is. So this process tends to produce something late, in terms of budget and schedule. I want to see something early. I know it's not going to be complete, but I want it visual. I want it interactive. I want it usable. I want teacher notes so that I can get in front of run through a role-playing class so I can try to teach it. And I want to see what happens when I'm online teaching or whatever platform we're going to use. The SMEs, the ideas and so forth, as I mentioned, were also almost always really unhappy, knowing that we could have done better, wondering why we didn't do better. Corrections really cause havoc and it becomes a blame game, and so we don't want that. So how do we change this? What's the alternative? So Christopher, before I go on to maybe a solution. Is there anything in chat there that are people throwing tomatoes at me yet?
No, no, I there's been a trickle of more things that align with the problems of ADDIE that you've been discussing that have come up, and talked a little bit about, you know, the last minute changes that have significant impact, where, you know, someone who was maybe not very well engaged with the project comes in late and says, no, that's not the thing that we want at all, and swoops in and asks for significant changes, which of course derails the project and demoralizes the team and can kind of suck the life out of everything.
Yeah. So what I think, and I'll talk about a little bit more, but in response to that, because that is a nightmare and it is so reliable. That is, this happens all the time, right? So we should expect it to happen, actually. Hoping that it won't is kind of delusion. It's just going to happen. Why does it happen? It happens because we're always going to have a better idea. Always going to have a better. My very good friend Joy Kopp, who's now retired from the field, had a adage that is as true as could be, which is, she says, no project is ever really finished. It's always abandoned. It's abandoned because you got to go do something else. You know, that you've run out of time, you've run out of budget. The training has to get rolled out. It's not rolled out because you don't have any good ideas left on how to make it better. She says you will always have an idea on how to make it better. Always, because you never can reach perfection, no matter what. That's unattainable. So it's just a hypothetical place, that perfection. So you know that this is going to happen, but why does it tend to happen so late? You know, why does the really best ideas that just got to have this thing pop up at the last minute? And it's because people are now responding to something that they feel like, this is it. This is going to be it. It's going to roll out. Am I totally comfortable with it? They're responding late because they now see what this is, and they see a potential that they couldn't see before this version of it was built. So it's just seems to be built into a process that has development occurring kind of late. And so one of the questions is, how do you get development happening sooner? And that's one of the big reasons for looking at another process. Is there a way to really change the sequence and the interdependence of things in a way that allows you to ask people, got any ideas for change? Like, you really want those ideas. That'll be a different scenario, won't it? And that's what we're all after here. If you get a bunch of people together and say, we need to do training on, you know, the customer service desk, or, you know, we need to do training on, we need to train our mechanics, or we need to train people to use our new software system or our new process, or whatever it is. If you get a bunch of people together and say, what should we do? How should we do this? You will get flooded with so many ideas that you really don't know what to do, and it's going to be eating up a lot of your time, right? It's a tough question. It's the typical question of what should we do, right? I like a different question, and this will show you how this relates to the theme of ideas popping up late that I was talking about. A much easier question is for somebody to step forward and put on the table an idea saying, here's how I think we should do this training. Why shouldn't we? Now, why is that such a different question? It's a different question because people are going to be focused on something put in front of them, something specific. It's almost like a little piece of development is already happening. So if you can put it in front of people in a visual form, that's better. Yeah, if you just sketch it, that works really well. And in our course, we talk about the supernatural power that sketches have. Um, Today, of course, I'm just giving you a high-level overview of what SAM is like and how it contrasts in our courses. You get to actually apply it in projects with mentorship, and you'll see how it works. And that's really important to have that mentorship with, because it's radically different. Even though all the things in ADDIE come to play, they come to play in such a different way here. So we'll put something in front of people and ask, why should we do this? The result of that is you get very specific information rather than general information about, this is a keeper. I like this thing. I don't like this. I don't like that. This would never work with our people. Doesn't work with our content, whatever. Oh, I'm really glad to know that. Now we're going to come back with another version of it and ask, why shouldn't we do that? The big question is, where do you get started with this first thing? Well, got an answer to that too. Where do we get that? Excuse me, no problem. Where do we get that first idea? Well, if you haven't come across it yet, I would like to introduce you to what we call CCAF. It is, I think, the most powerful framework that I've ever been able to use to create really great learning experiences. And we've built, I don't know, thousands probably of courses built on this concept now. It leads to things that are more interactive, more game-like, more fun. It's easier to build, people like it better, and so forth. So I hope I won't be apologizing for this like I do for ADDIE in a few years. But right now, I tell you, I am such confidence in this being a superior way of designing and building learning experiences that I just totally endorse it. So what do we mean by context, challenge, activity, feedback to create the big I, the interactive learning experiences? Well, first, the context. Lots of courses begin by saying, here's why you should take this course, and here are all the wonderful things you're going to learn from it, and here are the learning objectives, and so on. And you know, most students are starting to fall asleep already. Yeah. Well, I'm in this course, aren't I already? I know I have to take this course, so forth. It'd be great to have the CEO come welcome all of you, you know, and we believe in you, and this is going to be a great course. And, you know, okay. And then here are foundational principles. Number one, and you start going through all of this stuff, you need to remember these things. Here's the process that we use and so forth. What's missing from all of that is the kind of, why should I care? What's my role in this? What do I get from it? What do I benefit from? And just why is it relevant? And so what we suggest is that you forego a lot of that introduction. It's okay to say how happy we are to have you with us, welcome, so forth. But, you know, don't spend a lot of time on that, you know. What we like to do is put people in a context that really answers the question, why should I be interested in this? So in your job, imagine that you are at the front desk of Target. And I mentioned this because I used to use this example of Target. It turned out we had somebody in one of our classes from Target. And they said, this example that you conjured up is actually a real case. It's a real situation that happens. And I said, oh, good, because I just made it up as an example, but now I use it as a real life thing, which is, suppose that you are on the first day of your job, you're at that desk, the returns desk, someone brings you a product that to return, that Target has never sold, and they want their money back. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Ask somebody, you know, what am I going to, wow, I might have to do that, right? Yes, you might have to do that. And so we put you in the context of being at that desk, needing to handle a client or a customer who wants to return something that you've never sold. And your objective really is going to be to have that customer love Target even more than they did when they came in the store, when they are now walking out of the store with that product still under their arm, right? so, so how can you do that? What we find, and there's just ample research in how people learn, so forth, that it's more powerful to challenge somebody with a situation like this right up front than it is to paint the situation and then say, here's how you handle this. Step one, do this. Step two, do this. Step three, do this. Watch this video and see this person doing it. That could work. That could work. This works better. And that is to ask somebody to take a run at it and see what they can do. And be ready with hints and helps if they're just blank, or if they start to do something wrong, which is really great, a learning experience, you can let them see the consequences of it, and so you might have this person asking for your manager right away and saying how upset they are with you. Well, you don't want that, right? And that is a possibility. And so, but going through that as a simulated experience is going to create a memorable learning point that will guide behavior. The activity is that we want you to be able to do something in a realistic manner, which basically says not a raw multiple choice question, because the world doesn't say, here's your dilemma. Are you going to do A, this, B, this, C, this? Because they're likely going to be things listed in there that you would never have thought of on your own. And what we want people to do is to be rewarded when their intuitive knowledge or their experience leads them to do an effective thing. So trying to teach somebody to do something they can already do well just frustrates and bores people. It's a waste of time, right? If, however, you let this experience demonstrate to them and to you and to the software that they're competent, you have a chance just to reward them and congratulate them and say, this is really great that you know how to do it. If they don't know how to do it, then you know a little bit more about them. And now you know how to help them a little bit. And so now in feedback, what you do is provide the instruction that you might have provided to all learners up front, whether they need it or not. Now you're providing just the feedback that this individual needs because of how they perform. And we love to show it in terms of consequences of what that means, what happened afterward. This is just a fundamentally great model. It just works in every content area that we've come across. It helps individualize instruction in a very pragmatic way. It gives you a different way of going about development from what Addie does, because it starts with the learner experience. And as you see, now we go out and we look for the content. What are the challenges that people are going to face? Well, we'd start with what are the contexts that people are in? What tools will they have? Where will they stand? Where will they sit? What can they do? What can't they do? And then what challenges happen real life? We want especially challenges that are often failed by people. Where are the mistakes people most often make? We want challenges that are going to bring those up so that we can train in that and so forth. Just, I can't stress enough how effective this approach is and how simple it is, because you've got this framework and you can right away start working with your subject matter experts and people to find this out. So where does that first idea come from? You get information enough that allows you to find a context to challenge what the activity and what the feedback might be. And you ask everybody, why shouldn't we do this? And they'll have lots of reasons why. And they'll say the context isn't right. We almost never run into that one, but here's what happened. The challenge usually presents itself in a different way, or this challenge is an important one, and so forth. Great. Tell me all about that. So then what we do is we work this iteratively, right? So we throw out that first CCAF or that first idea. You don't have to use CCAF, obviously, for SAM to be applicable. So my question is, why wouldn't you? Because it's so much simpler and it's so powerful, but you don't have to. So you would put something out on the table and you would ask your primary stakeholders to evaluate that. Why shouldn't we do this? After which you will design something else. You'll come up with modifications, you'll design it, and you'll develop it to the extent that people can really appraise it, So rapid prototyping is really a valuable asset. You want people who can build something that has enough content to it, enough context to it, enough interactivity to it, that you really start to get a sense of what the final product would be if we stayed with this idea. And then we evaluate it again. What we found is that if you do this kind of a magical 3 times, with the second time saying, okay, imagine that we couldn't do that. What would be another idea? Let's come up with a completely different idea and ask us why we shouldn't do that. Because I want to see if I can do something that's better, just very much better than the thing that we started with. And so I like wiping the slate clean and say, we've got this, we're not going to forget it, but let's see if we can design something different, just something different. The whole purpose is to make it different at first, and then to see how it comes out. And very often people think, no, I really like that first idea, until they get their second one kind of designed and developed. And then they think, boy, I'm glad we did this a second time. This is really coming out better than the first one, isn't it? By the time you do this 3 times, you got something that everybody is going to think, wow, now this is good. This is opening up and almost begging for people to be generating those new great ideas based on something they're seeing that in other processes doesn't happen until we're getting to the end. We got to get this finished and rolled out, right? And so tensions are high there. Here we're in a creative zone where we really can get a lot of input from people. And we're just finding this is so very effective. So again, the focus is on the learner experience. It's a creative process. You'll see there's very little documentation because we're building things. We're not describing them. We're actually building them so that we can actually look at it. And the client is involved in this case. It's not, they give us their input and then go away. We're doing this together. We're working with them. So they've kind of got a stake in it. Ask, why shouldn't we do this? And it creates functional applications or course plans or whatever, again, platform you're using. Most of our work involves at least a large portion of e-learning, but it works well for ILT and other forms as well too. So the overall process of SAM is more than this, of course, but this is the fundamental concept that we do this iteration. We do backgrounding as a first phase to try to get whatever information we can. So when we throw out that very first idea, it isn't just a completely random, stupid idea when we're asking why shouldn't we do it. It's based on whatever knowledge is handy and easy, but we don't go into a big analysis phase because Alison Rossett wrote in her famous book about First Things Fast, analysis paralysis doesn't pay off, and yet you can spend as much time and effort on analysis as you'd ever want to, because there are always more questions to explore. They say just find out, what's general knowledge, what information is generally available, and get into iterative design. You'll notice down at the bottom there in the preparation phase a thing called the savvy start. And that's a very important process where we do just what I was describing, of in a matter of usually 2 days, 2 full days, getting a team together, including the stakeholders. It's very important that you get the stakeholders, including the people who supervise the trainers, the people who are trained, the training people, but whoever this means the most to in terms of success needs to be there for this early thing. They don't have to be there all the way through the process, but it's really important. We've documented all of this in 2 books. One of them is Leading Agile for Sam, and another one is a field guide that also has agendas for meetings, checklists, and so forth to make it really practical. You'll notice that there's deliverables across the bottom. So project planning comes after the savvy start, because we don't know what's going to come out of that. When we say, why shouldn't we do this? We're going to start to develop what we should do. And that's when we can start to figure out what the budget's going to need to be. Is it going to need to be 3D simulations at a very high level of fidelity, or is it going to be something simpler than that? We're going to have a lot of video, minimum video, and so forth. All of that's going to get figured out, and we can produce a product then. Okay, so in getting started, that first thing, you have to find out who has budget authority. You really want to know this, because sometimes the budget needs to be quite different than was originally expected, at least to realize what the team is now thinking is going to be important. Who cares most about this? Why is the learning program being developed? What behaviors need to be changed? Who's going to supervise what's been tried in the past, and so forth. Again, we detail all of this in the classes, in the books. It's important to get the right people there at the start. It's not always easy, and yet it's worth pushing as hard as you can. You won't get everybody you want, but you want to make sure that you've got everybody you could have gotten. So we try to get all of those people there. Then we sketch, and we really believe strongly in rough drawings of things, not verbal descriptions, not lists of things, but actually sketching out what might be, again, if it's e-learning, on the screen, or what visuals might an instructor have, so forth. And they can be very rough. In fact, it's good that they're rough, because we don't want anybody thinking that because I work so hard making this pretty picture and drawing this, that we're going to have to use it. We want them really rough so that we're really happy wadding it up and throwing it away right away. In the iterative phase, we're doing very much what I've mentioned about going through and revising, doing it again, revising, expecting to do this. Making changes is not a fault in this system. Making changes is progress. It's just that we will limit how many times we're going to do it, and then feel comfortable saying, look, we could do more, and the product will probably get better, but it's never going to be perfect anyway, and so this is probably going to be worth pursuing going forward. Then after we've rolled it out and after we've used it for, who knows, a month, a year or two, we'll come back and make some iterations and make it better then. And we'll really know how it's working and how it's not basing on how we expect it to work, but how did it really work. So containing the number of iterations really makes sense. We already talked about that, so I'll skip on. And then finally, in development, for large projects, you might have a separate development team from the design team. I like to have them all one team from beginning to end where I possibly can, everybody working on the project from day one. Sometimes, when we have multi-year projects with, that's, they're really, really big, then we have specialized teams that work on them. And in the courses, we go through in detail how to get development done. We're going to also see ideas occur in the development stage. Again, we're expecting some of that. And sometimes those ideas are going to be worth kicking back to iterative design so that we can take another look at it. Too much detail for today, I think.
Yeah. And we've got great questions coming in through the chat that we should wrap up here with.
All right.
Should we jump to that?
Yeah.
Okay. Max is asking an interesting question about in the instructional design, providing demonstration or modeling of best practices. And I'm thinking, as you were talking about CCAF, the feedback can really provide a lot of that.
Yes, and my good friend David Merrill, who many of you will know, and has a new book out, by the way, really feels strongly about demonstrating best practices early on before allowing students to explore what they think they would do on their own. So I'm happy to disagree with him, even having the notion that he might be right. But what I know happens is that if you let people dart out on their own first and come up with the best solutions they can, they're then very eager to compare what they've come up with to what the expert or the professional has done. And they absorb that information in a way, in very quickly, and feel good that they were smart enough to get some of the underpinnings and many things right, as they will in many cases. And now are really happy to have that extra little boost and say, oh, yeah, that would have been better. So it keeps people very much active and involved if they're always doing things. And when we are giving feedback, that's our little portal to say now they're really interested in finding out, could it be better? How could it be better? What tips can I give them, and so forth. And so giving them that example or that ideal model or whatever it might be at feedback time rather than up front, I think reaches their inner cognition faster and deeper than showing it up front. Because let me just say this quickly. A lot of us have taken courses on how to use a software application, and you follow along with somebody and they're showing you the expert way to do it and you're following along. And then they say, now you do it on your own, and you think, yeah, I can do this. And 2 steps in, you think, now what did they do? What did they do? And that's because somebody else was doing the thinking of what is interdependent, what's the next best step, and so forth, and you were following along. When you have to figure that out on your own, you're getting a lot more out of the time and energy you're putting into the learning space.
And I think you've talked in some other presentations about, the fallacy of watching someone do something and thinking to yourself, oh, that is something that I can do or I know how to do. And then the moment that you go to perform, you realize it's much harder, you don't know how to do it.
In that great little compendium of research studies on learning and instruction, a book called Make It Stick, there's just some wonderful revelations in there, I think, for all of us. And one of them is that we're not good judges of our competencies. And so we think when we watch somebody do it, we think, yeah, I can do that. I think I see all those people in Cirque du Soleil. I think, wow, that's amazing. I probably couldn't do that. But there are a few things they do. I think, yeah, gee, that didn't look so hard. And, you couldn't even do the simple things.
Let me ask you, I'll try to summarize. There were several questions here that are all about the same, which talks about, what sort of things would you use the SAM process to teach? There were a few things about, does it work for things that are skills that are extraordinarily complex? Does it work for soft skills? And for different modalities, not just e-learning.
Right. Okay. Well, first of all, I honestly haven't found any content area where it's not applicable. There may be some, I certainly will admit that possibility, but I haven't found it yet. Works really well with soft skills, terrific with soft skills. Procedural, yes, absolutely. Using
It's
software,
2 o'clock.
yes. So it works. What was the other part of the question? There were 2 parts to it. I think
Modality types?
Oh, yeah. So it doesn't have to be e-learning. Absolutely not. And I was trying to mention that as I went through. This still works very well as long as we're talking about interactive. This isn't something that we designed for a classroom where everybody sits in their rows and you just present material. This is for active learning, not for passive, which I don't have a lot of time for passive. Why? I guess sometimes you're so constrained that that's all you can do. And still, there are some concepts in CCAF, I think, that can be applied even in a classroom setting.
Maybe one more. How do you overcome the fear of making a mistake?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because we know some people have that fear. And as you know, Christopher, I'm working on a new book based on designing the learner's journey, which is something we don't think about nearly enough. And that's that some learners at the outset are going to be apprehensive. Some of them are going to be irritated that they have to take the training and don't think that they need it. Some people are going to be feeling really grateful that, oh, I get to learn this and so on. We often just don't take that into account at all. We just design this for everybody. And yet meeting people where they are in the affective domain emotionally really makes a difference, because if we are fearful and apprehensive, at some point, the limbic system in the brain shuts down your ability to think clearly and to make good decisions. And if you're just ignoring the fact that you've got people that are really nervous and afraid and thinking they're going to make a mistake and be humiliated or whatever it might be, and you're just ignoring that, your training's not going to be any good at all. So it is important when we're using CCAF to make sure that people get an orientation that it's perfectly fine to make mistakes. In fact, we want you to make mistakes. So if you make a mistake, feel comfortable thinking that I did this on purpose just to see what would happen. And that's great, because we want you to see what happens when you make mistakes. And so it's fairly easy to put people at ease by giving them the proper orientation.
Awesome. Thanks for that. I'm going to hand it back to Jennifer, who's going to talk a little bit about a giveaway, I think.
Yeah.
Wrap up our webinar, and I'll keep answering some questions in chat and in the Q&A panel while that happens.
Okay, thank you. And thanks everybody for letting me expound on something that I truly believe in and want to share with you in hopes that it will help you.
Well, thank you very much for all of that insight. I personally found it a value add, and every time I have the pleasure of hearing all of your wisdom and insight and passion as a trainer, as a designer of programs, and just as a perpetual student, it's invaluable. And I think I speak volumes, no doubt, on behalf of everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. We are thrilled to let you know that this is just the beginning. And so what is next, if you should wish? We are offering a course, as Christopher mentioned about an hour ago when we first started off. We have a class starting in February, in fact, February the 8th. And what this course about Agile e-learning development will provide you is 5 weeks of Dr. Michael Allen's ingenious model of SAM, his approach. Like I said, today is just the beginning. So I think you guys got a really, really healthy taste. As well, included in your enrollment would be exclusive access to HR.com's learning environment, where we house all of your resources for your course and so much more. You will also be provided in part of your enrollment, and I have mine handy, are our books about SAM. And the reason why I have these in hand is because, and I recognized a couple of names in the session, I was a learner this past summer in this course, genuinely with the intention to learn how I can make my training programs more impactful and effective. And I just really genuinely had such a profound experience, and it has genuinely changed, I would say, the way in which I do my work. And I really don't mean to sound like an infomercial. I'm saying this incredibly authentically. I had the great privilege to, well, I guess, have the microphone today. So that being said as well, included too, upon completion of your course, you will earn Allen Academy credentials, which you can then boast all over your LinkedIn profile. And don't tell my employer, but before you know it, you're going to have people being attracted to your LinkedIn profile. So that being said, if you would like to join, please do so by visiting hr.com/LL1. And in fact, we would love to share with you a $50 savings. So the regular price of this course, which takes place weekly for 5 weeks, is $795, but we're going to drop it down by $50. So please feel welcome. Capture the promo code iHeartElearning and head on over to hr.com/LL1. Secure your seat. Let us, ship you out these books, and we'll get you ready for your February 8th, start date. We have done, I think, a lot of Q&A already, and in the interest of time, and we value your time, please feel welcome. Send us any questions that you may have by means of email to education@hr.com. And as was mentioned, my friend Chrissy and I, at a later date, because time I think has escaped us, we are going to be drawing 2 lucky names for a contest that you have entered into just by means of attending this session. And we're going to be having a contest to win a free copy of these materials, as well as a free seat, a free enrollment in our February 8th class. And something that is, like I said, absolutely invaluable. So that being said, please feel once again welcome. Contact us by email, contact us by phone. We also have a live chat feature over on the hr.com website. We're always here for you. And we thank you very much for your valuable time and attention today. We hope everybody has a fantastic rest of their day. We wish everybody continued health and safety. Once again, thanks for joining. Bye, everybody, and thank you to our speakers. Thank you, Dr. Allen and Christopher.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great day, everybody.